almost feel the cold before you even open the door. Winter has taken the village again, not the harsh kind from stories, but the quiet one that settles in your bones and stays there. The sun has slipped beneath the horizon hours ago, and smoke from 100 hearths drifts upward like slow prayers. Tonight, I'm not in a castle or monastery. I'm standing in front of a peasant's home, one of hundreds scattered along the valley, each shaped from timber, wattle, and daub. The thatch above is rimmed with frost, and the air smells faintly of smoke, animals, and earth. I push the wooden door open. The hinge groans. Warmth greets me in the form of light, not heat, a dim orange glow from the central hearth. Inside, life is small but alive. A woman stirs a pot that hangs over the embers. A man removes his boots, rubbing mud from the soles. 2 children are half asleep, faces lit by firelight. Near the doorway, curled tight on a bed of rushes, a dog lifts its head. His name, the family says, is Tanner, after his color and the trade his grandfather once kept. Tanner has the kind of calm eyes that only animals in hard times possess. He waits, patient and hopeful, because he knows that when the family eats, he too will be remembered. Here, companionship is not luxury, it's survival. A scholar from the University of Reading once wrote that in peasant homes, animals were as close as kin, both warmth and witness to a family's endurance. I believe it. I crouch near the fire. The pot is bubbling slowly, thick and steady. The smell is earthy barley, onions, perhaps a strip of salted pork. The dish is what villagers called pottage, a humble stew that never truly finished, only continued. Each day more water, more grain, more roots, more hope. Records from Warham Percy, a deserted village in Yorkshire, show that such pots might simmer for a week, each meal a continuation of the last. Outside, the snow has begun to fall again. The sound is soft, almost invisible, but it changes everything. You sense the walls tighten, the people draw closer, the dogs shift nearer to the fire. This is a winter night in medieval England, and this is what they ate, not feasts or fine roasts, but warmth disguised as food. I lift a wooden spoon and taste. It's plain, but there's comfort in it. The barley has released its sweetness. The onions have melted into the broth. A pinch of herbs, thyme or mint perhaps, rises faintly from the steam. Some say peasants added herbs not for taste, but to disguise age, the sourness of stored vegetables. Others say it was for health, mint for the stomach, sage for the spirit. Either way, it worked. When you live with so little, even flavor becomes an act of faith. I glance at Tanner. He watches every bite, tail thumping once against the floor. I break off a crust of dark bread, rye and oat mixed, and drop it beside him. He eats slowly, as if he knows how rare small mercies are. A log shifts in the hearth, sparks climb into the air. The children murmur, the woman hums softly, not joy, but something deeper, a song that keeps the night from feeling endless. Outside, beyond the frost-covered window, the fields sleep under their furrows. The stubble from the last harvest still pokes through the snow, and the path to the manor is invisible. But inside this one-room world, everything necessary is here: food, warmth, and each other. As a historian, I've spent years reading their accounts, touching the ink stains left by hands long gone. Every record, every shard, every line of parchment tells the same quiet truth. The medieval peasant's life was not just hardship, it was endurance wrapped in ritual. And nowhere is that ritual clearer than in how they ate at night. The meal is ending now. The family scrapes the last of the stew into bowls, saving a bit of the broth for morning. The fire is fed, one last stick of wood. Tanner sighs and and settles down again, his nose tucked beneath his paw. In that sound, that small, contented breath, there's a message that cuts through the centuries. Survival doesn't need grandeur. It just needs rhythm, patience, and care. The bowls are nearly empty now, but no one rises yet. Warmth from the meal lingers like an invisible blanket. You hear spoons scrape wood, a sound as old as life. Someone coughs, the dog shifts in his sleep. Outside, wind presses against the door, seeking shelter. As I sit among them, I see how structured this hour is. Medieval peasants didn't simply eat, they performed a nightly ritual of gratitude and caution. Even the poorest held customs to close the day. A wooden cup of watered ale passed once or twice, never more. Scholars note ale was nourishment and hygiene, safer than water. It wasn't luxury, it was protection disguised as pleasure. The woman wipes the spoon and sets it near the fire. The man murmurs about tomorrow's chores, hauling wood, checking sheep, mending a fence post. Their tone is soft, steady. I've seen this in records from Brigstock, a village Judith Bennett studied in women in the medieval countryside, people who know tomorrow won't surprise them, and that's the comfort they crave. From my place near the wall, I notice details: herbs hanging from a beam, garlic braids drying, a clay pot sealed with wax, preservation everywhere. Winter storage was chemistry and faith. Families salted roots, fermented cabbage, smoked fish when they could. Even the poor shared salt cellars, borrowing pinches to last through January. A child near the fire stifles a yawn and leans against her mother. She traces patterns on the floor. Her brother clutches a small wooden toy carved from a spoon handle, a pig, rough but loved. The dog, Tanner, lifts his head, nudges the toy, then curls back down. That moment, the child's laugh, the dog's sleepy curiosity feels timeless. Even in hardship, people still smile at something alive. A study in medieval archaeology said pets offered microdoses of joy amid scarcity. Looking at Tanner, I believe it. The man leans forward to speak. It's not a story of heroes, but memory. Which tools broke, who fell ill, whose cow calved early. Oral history in raw form. In villages where parchment was rare, memory was the archive. Every detail shared tonight will be repeated, keeping the past alive by sound alone. I glance at the pot, still above embers, cooling now. The smell of barley and smoke lingers. The woman sprinkles ashes into it to ward off spirits. She says, records from Somerset mention this act, symbolic, harmless, deeply believed. The ashes sealed the meal, keeping hunger from returning before dawn. The night deepens. Only the glow of coals and the faint glint of a pewter cup remain. Silence fills the room, and I slow my words. This silence is history too. The modern world forgets quiet was once sacred. Softer, slower. If your eyes grow heavy, let them. This story isn't meant to demand attention. It's meant to carry it gently. The peasant's night meal wasn't for drama, but peace, one humble bowl at a time. And as their world faded into darkness, ours can fade into rest. The night settles deeper into the house, wrapping everything in a quiet that hums instead of echoes. The pot has been lifted from the fire. What remains will cool to be warmed again at dawn. The cycle never breaks. The same stew welcomes another day. The father leans back, hands rough from frost. His eyes find the embers, and in that glow begins something ancient, the telling of stories. Peasants didn't end nights with silence. They ended them with memory, reminders that even in cold, they belonged to something greater than hunger. He starts slowly, voice low, meant more for the fire than for us. He speaks of a winter when snow buried roads so deep Even the lord's men couldn't collect taxes. The family lived on turnip broth and rye crusts. Yet that was the year a miracle came. A stray goat wandered in and stayed till spring. It gave milk, warmth, laughter. He chuckles, the children smile. Tanner's tail taps as if he knows goats can save lives. I've read of such tales in folklore from the Museum of English Rural Life. Families wove legends from small mercies, the dog that barked before a storm, the cat that guarded the dying. These weren't decorations, they were survival myths, hope whispered in the dark. The mother adds her memory, St. Bridget turning water to milk for a starving child, a tale from Ireland carried across villages by travelers. She tells it not to preach, but to calm her daughter's breathing. Historian Barbara Hannay-Walt called this oral world the Peasants' Cathedral, where words replaced glass and stories replaced prayer. The fire shrinks to a steady glow. I trace soot lines on the rafters and imagine the many nights these beams have seen: hunger, laughter, grief. The soot is history, survival baked into wood. In Warham, Percy, archaeologists found beams layered with smoke year after year, proof of return to the hearth. The children fight sleep, pretending to listen, but their blinks slow. The mother gestures for them to lie near the fire. The smell of wool, smoke, and breath fills the air. The father ends with a lesson that gratitude keeps a home warmer than wood. It feels modern, but carved from centuries of truth. All sleep close to the hearth, even Tanner. His body joins the warmth equation like another log in the circle. Peasants knew thermal wisdom before science named it. Warmth wasn't owned, it was shared. A Cambridge scholar wrote, "Every degree of heat was communal property." It's an elegant truth. Outside, snow keeps falling. The world is white and empty, but inside, time feels suspended. You could believe snow and fire are halves of the same design, one cold, one light, both keeping life alive. I sit in the dark, notebook forgotten, just listening, because history isn't always in records or ruins. Sometimes it exists in a child's breath beside a dying fire, in a dog's sigh, in the smell of barley thickening overnight. This is the kind of history, no parchment records, but every heart remembers. Midnight in the medieval village was nothing like ours. No clocks, no hum of roads, no light marking hours. Time existed in rhythm, the slow pulse of fire, creak of timber, and breathing of those asleep. I step quietly toward the door, careful not to wake anyone. Tanner lifts his head to check I'm still a friend, then rests again. The cold greets me like a wall. The air smells of iron and frost. Snow softens every sound, turning the world into silence. Across the lane, another faint light glows, a cottage like this one. Inside, another family sits before another hearth, eating the same meal. The village feels like a constellation, each fire a star, each home a world. Snow crunches underfoot as I walk toward the path. Every house here is built from labor and patience. Beams were cut from common woods, often shared. The Shapwick studies found peasants exchanged tools, food, even parts of homes. If one roof leaked, all repaired it. Isolation was a luxury of the rich. I glanced toward the granary, a raised hut at the edge of the path. It's locked tight. The harvest was meager, and every sack of barley matters. In harsh winters, some villages used a grain pledge, each family contributing a share to be stored and rationed later. It wasn't charity, it was survival through trust. Hooves echo faintly beyond the fields, maybe a patrol or traveler. Even that speaks of dependence. Peasants might resent their lords, yet during famine or storm, everyone looked upward for order. Taxes and tithes tied them to power. But the same system sometimes gave alms when hunger grew too visible. Historian Mark Bailey called it a cruel equilibrium, exploitation that accidentally sustained life. I pass the chapel near the lane's end. Its door is half open, candles melted to wax. On a bench rests a loaf and a bowl of peas, offerings for the poor. Even among the poorest, generosity survived. Records from Leicestershire describe villagers leaving food at church doors for those wandering without hearth. That act of mercy, repeated for centuries, shaped community. The wind shifts, carrying smoke and something sweeter, maybe cider warming uphill. For a moment, it feels unfair, but envy fades fast here. When you live with scarcity, you learn not to measure life by what you lack, but by what you keep. I turn back. Through a gap in the thatch, the faint glow of the hearth still breathes. Inside, the family sleeps in a cluster of warmth, Tanner curled beside the children. Their breathing blends with the fire's sigh. Before I close the door, I write in my notebook, in hunger, they built a culture of sharing. It belongs to every villager who gave their portion so another could eat, every mother who diluted broth, every child who learned generosity was the only insurance against despair. The fire flickers once more, casting light on the herbs and the cooling pot. History doesn't live in castles. It lives in these shadows, in the quiet choice to give instead of keep. A faint light edges through the thatch. Not sunrise yet, only that ghostly gray before it. The air has cooled, my breath shows in the dimness. The fire lies in embers, beneath ash. Even warmth feels tired now, but not defeated. The woman stirs first, quiet and deliberate. She wraps a shawl, crouches beside the pot. Last night's stew has thickened into paste. She adds water, stirs, sets it near the coals. This is breakfast, yesterday's dinner reborn. Nothing wasted. Ever, in the medieval world, food was a loop. Each meal began where the last ended. Waste was a sin, both spiritual and economic. One Cambridge paper said, bones became broth, broth became pottage, pottage became feed, and the cycle went on. Nothing disappeared. It only changed form. The man wakes next, rubbing frost-rough hands. He opens the door to the morning's breath. The cold rushes in. He studies the horizon, no sunrise, just the world whitening. The fields sleep under snow, the village under silence. Behind me, Tanner shakes awake, the faint jingle of wire at his neck. He stretches, yawns, pads toward the man. A pat, a word both given. Tanner isn't just company, he's rhythm. When he moves, the house moves. His instincts are their clock. The woman adds dried herbs, thyme, maybe juniper. Scholars say they weren't for taste alone, but health. In long winters, peasants burned sage or mint to cleanse the air. Homemade medicine before the word existed. Steam rises, the smell fills the room, earth and memory. The man breaks bread, shares it. She hands him the first spoonful. No ceremony, only gratitude. Through the window, dawn spreads pale across the fields. The pens come into view, a pig, 2 chickens, a goat scratching snow. Life in miniature. Each creature has purpose. Milk, eggs, warmth, companionship. To tend the animal was to tend the family, wrote Dorothy Hartley. And here, it's truth. The man dresses for work, wool tunic, leather belt, hood low. Time here is patient. The woman ladles stew into 2 bowls, saving the rest for the children. Tanner gets his share, a thin broth in a wooden dish. He laps slowly, tail brushing the rushes. Outside, a rooster crows. Other houses stir faint voices, a latch lifting. The village wakes as one body, stretching after long sleep. I note in my book, their survival was not brilliance, but rhythm. They didn't fight winter, they They negotiated with it. Every bowl, every scrap was a pact. Will endure, you'll relent. And somehow, every year, that promise held. The man steps out, breath fogging. The woman sits beside the fire, eyes closed, listening to the pot's soft bubbling. Inside this house, the medieval morning feels less like a beginning and more like the continuation of a very old day. Outside, the air has turned glassy with frost. The ground crunches like powdered glass. Smoke rises from chimneys, quiet signals of endurance. The sun is pale, barely a coin against the clouds, but even that dull light feels like mercy. The man shoulders a wooden yoke with 2 empty pails, heading for the communal well down the frozen path. I follow for a while, watching his careful, measured steps. Winter isn't just cold, it's an economy of motion. He passes 2 neighbors already at work, one splitting kindling, another scattering grain for chickens. They trade brief greetings, nothing more. Words cost warmth here. At the well, 3 villagers wait with buckets in hand. They talk softly about grain stores, how much is left, whether the miller will trade flour for labor again. Records from Norfolk show this rhythm well. Barter was the village's heartbeat. Work for wheat, bread for repairs, shelter for silence. Life moved without coin, an old market before the word existed. The man draws water slowly, steadying the rope. When the bucket surfaces, he helps an older woman lift hers. She laughs, saying her back has survived worse winters. Age here isn't weakness, it's proof that endurance is possible. On the way back, he stops by a neighbor's cottage. From his satchel, he offers a small cloth bundle, coarse salt, wrapped in linen, and receives a handful of dried peas. Both smile and part ways. Peasant wealth lay not in possessions, but in relationships, wrote historian Christopher Dyer. Each favor was its own currency. When we return, the woman has revived the fire. The smell of reheated stew mingles with wet wool drying by the hearth. The children are awake, faces soft with sleep. Tanner circles them once before settling near the door, guard and companion both. The man washes his hands with cold water. The woman passes him bread. They eat quietly, no complaint, no rush. Draw, trade, eat, mend, their choreography of survival. A Cambridge scholar once called it the unspoken rhythm of endurance. The phrase fits. After breakfast, the woman wraps a small bundle, dried beans, bread, a sprig of sage, a gift for a widow near the chapel. No one names it charity. It's simply life's order. These unseen gestures built the backbone of rural England, compassion without witness. Outside, children play in the snow, laughter cutting through the cold. A boy throws a snowball at a goose, misses, and laughs harder. Even hunger allows laughter when you've made peace with simplicity. I note, hunger shapes the body, but sharing shapes the soul. The village moves as one organism, each house sustaining the next. When I glance back, the pot still simmers, always simmering, the hearth as memory, cooking day after day, a quiet promise that tomorrow will find them ready. By midday, the snow thaws enough to turn paths into brown ice. The air smells of damp soil, a scent peasants knew better than perfume. The fields still sleep under frost, but life doesn't pause. It bends and adapts. The man joins a small group near the village edge. They carry tools, a mattock, a dull spade, a wooden rake. There's no planting in winter, but work never stops. They're repairing drainage ditches, one of the few tasks before the ground hardens. I stand with them, breath mixing with theirs, each exhale visible in the cold. They work in silence, rhythmically. One bends, one lifts, one stamps mud back in place. It's not efficient, but deeply human. Labor, wrote Colin Platt In medieval Britain, a social history was not just survival, it was structure. Watching them, I understand. Around noon, a bell rings faintly from the manor, the signal for rest. The sound travels thinly through the air, half music, half command. The peasants stop and gather near a stone wall where scraps of sunlight pool. The woman from earlier arrives with a basket, dark bread, salted turnips, a strip of dried pork fat. It's meager, but they eat with quiet satisfaction. They chew slowly, conserving both energy and sound. When food is scarce, even swallowing is deliberate. Peasants described meals, not by taste, but by warmth. Did it heat the belly? Warmth meant survival. Flavor was luxury. I sit beside them, fingers numb, but curiosity awake. I break a piece of bread, dense, sour, and taste the grit of the millstone. There's truth in this bread. It doesn't hide the work that made it. Studies from Warham, Percy, found stone dust in bones, proof every meal wore down the poor's teeth. Even sustenance demanded sacrifice. One man laughs suddenly. His voice carries like a warm gust. He's talking about the Lord's steward who slipped on the ice, a story told before, but still worth it. Laughter spreads, and for a moment, they forget how little they have. Humor is rebellion. When the meal ends, each offers thanks, not to God, but to each other. Gratitude here isn't abstract. It's survival etiquette. Every shared piece strengthens the chain between them. If one link breaks, the rest weakens. This isn't charity, it's empathy turned to economy. As they rise, the older woman wraps the bread in cloth. She'll save it for evening. No one eats to fullness. Night needs reserves. Peasants called this restraint keeping company with tomorrow. The phrase lingers as they return to work. The sky grays again, familiar afternoon gloom. Shadows stretch across the frozen earth. A crow lands on a barn, black against white. Everything feels balanced between endurance and exhaustion, yet the people continue, steady as breath. When I turn toward the cottage, the faint smell of smoke greets me. The fire has never gone out. It waits for night to fall and the pot to come alive once more. By the time the men return from the fields, the light has already begun to fade. Winter days are short, and shadows arrive before most work is finished. The snow crunches under their boots as they cross the narrow lanes, each carrying something small but vital, kindling, a broken handle, or just the weight of another day survived. The air outside is bitter. You can smell peat and oak smoke drifting from every hearth. The village exhales together, each chimney marking another family enduring. From the cottages, faint laughter, murmured talk, and barking dogs weave into the evening air. Life is quiet, but not silent. When I step back into the cottage, the fire glows amber against the beams. The woman is preparing the meal, the same pot, the same stew, but somehow renewed. She adds what's left from the day, a handful of leeks, a splash of ale, maybe a shred of dried pork. The change is small, but miraculous. Historians often call peasant diets monotonous, the same pottage, the same bread. But monotony was stability. Barbara Hannay-Walt once wrote that the familiar meal was the peasant's lullaby. The repetition soothed the mind, even when the stomach wasn't full. The man removes his boots and warms his cracked hands. His face softens as he sees the meal taking shape. The children huddle near Tanner, the dog stretched out like a rug. His tail beats lazily when the woman drops bread near his paws. It's a language of kindness that needs no words. Outside, the bells drift faintly again, the chapel's call for vespers. Some go, but most pray here at home, quietly, around their hearths. Faith is domestic, woven into meals and whispered before sleep. Judith Bennett called it practical piety, where religion and survival became one. They don't thank heaven for abundance, but for endurance. The woman ladles stew into bowls. The smell is rich, but humble: onions, oats, herbs, and smoke. The children reach for warmth before food. The father murmurs something, maybe a blessing, maybe relief. They eat slowly. Hunger doesn't rule them, patience does. The talk turns to weather, always the weather. The man mentions birds flying low, a sign of snow. The woman frowns at the woodpile, but smiles when the boy says Tanner will keep them warm. Even worry has its tenderness here. When the bowls are half empty, the woman saves the last spoonfuls, scraping them into a small cup and setting it near the window. For those who wander, she says, a tradition older than memory, leaving food for the lost or unseen. Hospitality written in hunger. Outside, the sky turns to slate. The first stars push through the clouds. The man adds one last log, and the room flares with warmth. Tanner sighs deeply, eyes closing as if memorizing the sound of peace. I write, they never called it hope. They simply lived it. Surrounded by smoke, stew, and slow breathing, I understand. This was the true feast of the medieval world. Not meat, not plenty, but belonging. The fire has dimmed to a soft pulse, a red heart beating in the room's center. The bowls are empty, set aside with the care of people who own few. The children's eyes grow heavy. Tanner shifts closer, resting his head on the girl's leg, his breath rising and falling with hers. The house settles into rhythm. The woman sits near the fire, hands folded. She begins to speak softly, her voice more rhythm than language. It's a story not of kings or saints, but of a baker's daughter who saved her village with a single loaf. In a winter worse than this one, she divided her last loaf, feeding neighbors one by one. By spring, when the fields thawed, all she fed were still alive. Bread shared, the story says, is bread returned. Versions of this tale appear in parish texts and oral records at the Museum of English Rural Life. It's not fiction, but a parable retold through centuries. The lesson never changes. Generosity is the only crop that never fails. The man listens, head bowed, thumb tracing a crack in his wooden bowl. His silence isn't boredom, it's reverence. When the story ends, he nods once and adds a short verse, a blessing for the fields, a wish for the thaw. It's not prayer, but habit. Here, words and faith are one. The boy asks if the baker's daughter truly lived. His mother smiles. Somewhere, she says, she still does. It's an answer that keeps children curious long after sleep takes them. Tanner lifts his head, listening to the wind scratch the wall. His gaze drifts toward the door, instinct, centuries deep, keeping him alert. Then, satisfied, he lies back down, pressing close to the girl. He's part of their safety, not just comfort. Notes from Warham. Percy mentioned dogs near hearths, proof their warmth mattered as much as loyalty. I look at Tanner and understand why. The woman stirs the embers, her face lit by orange glow. The ash swirls like smoke-colored snow. In that light, she looks timeless, a figure every century would know. Across medieval Europe, women kept the warmth. As historian Dorothy Hartley wrote, the hearth was her altar and food her liturgy. That line never left me. The man stretches beside the fire. The children sleep, bundled under rough blankets. The woman hums low, not a song, just sound filling the quiet between breaths. It's older than language, made before writing. Outside, the snow has stopped, leaving a silence so deep it hums. The world feels paused, waiting for work to begin again. Inside, the air smells of smoke, bread, and earth, scents that mark survival more than comfort. I write in my book, warmth is the only wealth that disappears when hoarded. The poor didn't build monuments, they built habits that outlived them. The woman lowers the spoon she used to stir the coals and lies beside her family. Tanner shifts once, nose tucked into his paws. The last flame flickers twice, then fades to ember. The night claims the house. All that remains is the steady breath of those who have earned rest. The house has gone still. The fire's last glow trembles beneath a veil of ash, faint and red, like the heartbeat of the night. I hear nothing but breathing, slow, layered, human. The rhythm of sleep is ancient here, filling the air with a peace both earned and fragile. I sit near the hearth, notebook open, ink barely visible. Tanner twitches in his sleep, chasing something unseen, a rabbit from memory or a scent from the fields. The children murmur in dreams, voices soft as wind over straw. The parents sleep side by side, faces calm, lined with work, but not regret. Outside, snow settles again. It falls so gently it could be mistaken for silence. Through a crack in the wall, a line of moonlight slips across the floor, tracing Tanner's back like a blessing. I whisper a thought I've never written, even hunger dreams. That's what this moment is, the dream of survival. The historian in me knows how rare such peace was. Records from the 14th century show winter hunger came by February. Stores thinned, debts deepened, disease followed. Yet here tonight, they are safe. For one night, they have enough. A Cambridge paper once called this state contentment without comfort. It fascinated me then, but only now do I understand. Contentment wasn't built on luxury, it was built on proportion. To have enough, even briefly, was grace. The fire exhales its last ember. Smoke drifts upward, smelling of barley and thyme. It curls along the beams, disappears into the cracks above. I watch it go, thinking how much history vanishes the same way, unseen but lingering. Peasants left no letters, no diaries, no statues. They left smoke, bones, pottery shards, soot on ceilings, footprints in frozen mud. Yet those fragments speak louder than the chronicles of kings. Tanner stirs, lifts his head, meets my gaze. His eyes catch the moonlight, silver and knowing. He doesn't bark, just watches, as if aware I'm trespassing in a dream, older than memory. Then he sighs and sleeps again, tail curling toward the dying fire. I pull my cloak tighter. The air bites now, sharp and clean. My breath drifts upward and fades. For a moment, I imagine I'm one of them, not a historian, just another soul waiting for dawn. And in that silence, I understand. Endurance isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to keep breathing. The night thickens, trees groan under snow. A dog barks somewhere distant, maybe to Tanner, maybe to the moon, then silence. I close my notebook before the ink freezes. One final note before sleep takes me. In hunger, they found faith. In repetition, meaning. In silence, their story. The candle's wick dies with a quiet hiss, leaving only darkness. Not frightening, but full. I lie beside the sleeping family. The cold reaches, but shared warmth pushes it away. And there, in the middle of history's longest winter, I drift into sleep, knowing that even in the poorest nights, something beautiful survives. The morning arrives quietly, like an apology. No trumpet of light, no sudden warmth, just the slow brightening of gray against frost. The roof creaks as snow begins to slide. From beyond the walls, a rooster crows stretched, tired, but persistent. It's enough to pull the village back into motion. The woman wakes first, always her. Her breath is visible in the cold room, each exhale rising like a prayer. She kneels by the hearth, pushes aside the ashes, and uncovers a faint glow, last night's fire. With straw and a whisper of breath, she coaxes it back to life. Sparks catch, then flame. This is her daily miracle. She stirs what's left in the pot. The stew from last night has hardened at the edges, but water and patience bring it back. Nothing wasted. Rebirth from leftovers, a philosophy, not a recipe. Poorest kept ledgers of portions, grain, meat, salt, ale. To waste any was to invite hunger. The man wakes next. He stretches, pulls on his rough wool tunic, and sits by the fire. He rubs hands until blood returns, then softens a hard piece of bread in the warm stew. Yesterday's flavors become strength for today. The children stir after, still bundled in blankets. They blink at the fire, smiling when Tanner rises to greet them. He yawns, stretches, and noses their hands. His tail thumps twice. Morning signal. He knows his role: guardian, companion, alarm clock. Tanner's rhythm is nature's own. The family eats slowly, sharing silence as if part of the meal. There's no hurry. The woman hums the same tune as last night, the rhythm of the spoon. The cycle continues as before, yet it feels new. Survival, repeated, becomes sacred. When they finish, the man wipes his bowl clean with bread and offers the last bite to Tanner. The dog accepts it gently, eyes bright. The act is wordless, but holds a truth scholars can't measure: generosity as instinct. Light spills across the wall, revealing every texture: soot on rafters, frost on the window, the dull glint of iron tools by the door. Every mark is evidence of use, of life in motion. Archaeologists found the same story in similar homes: soot layers, worn thresholds, cracked pots repaired with iron. Not wealth, but endurance. The woman takes the ashes outside, marking a new day. The air smells of smoke, hay, and something faintly metallic, the scent of winter itself. She murmurs a blessing, private and ancient, then closes the door. I note it down. To them, every morning was a quiet victory. Not celebrated, not spoken, only lived. The historian in me wonders how many such mornings went unrecorded. History remembers the noise, wars, kings, disasters, but not this: a family waking, alive together, with just enough. As light strengthens, the man gathers his tools. The woman hums, the children laugh. Tanner curls by the door. Life resumes, cyclical, faithful, unbroken. And I think maybe eternity was never about monuments. Maybe it's this, the act of beginning every morning against all odds. I step outside into the pale morning light. The village stirs, slowly, deliberately, like an organism waking from sleep. The cold has softened. It's sharp, but less hostile. Smoke rises from chimneys, gray columns reaching toward the colorless sky. Life here is measured, not in wealth, but in repetition. That rhythm, quiet, steady, kept them alive for centuries. I think about how far we've drifted from this existence. Today, we chase noise, abundance that numbs instead of nourishes. These people, though poor, knew something we've forgotten. Gratitude grows easiest in scarcity. They didn't wait for comfort to be thankful. They gave thanks because fire burned, bread hadn't run out, snow hadn't won. Scholars call it subsistence, satisfaction, fulfillment drawn from survival itself. I call it wisdom. In manorial records, I see families counting ounces of flour, measuring oil in spoonfuls, celebrating a pig's birth like a festival. They found meaning in maintenance. Modern life, for all its miracles, rarely pauses to notice such grace. Historian Christopher Dyer wrote that medieval endurance wasn't ignorance, but adaptation. They knew the limits of the world and therefore lived fully within them. I feel that truth. These people didn't conquer nature, they negotiated with it. They accepted hunger as a visitor, not an enemy. At the lane's edge, villagers mend a fence together. Their hands move in rhythm. One holds, one ties, one checks. No one commands. No one complains. Cooperation is instinct here, the fabric that kept generations from collapse. One act of help ensured help returned. The economy of kindness was older than any coin. The wind carries laughter. A boy runs down the path, chasing Tanner the dog, snow flying from his paws. The laughter cuts through the morning like sunlight through frost. For a moment, time folds. I see that joy isn't modern, it's ancient. Quieter here. People say history is about kings and battles. But in places like this, where smoke rises, animals breathe, a mother stirs the same pot each morning, I know history is also endurance. Ordinary lives, repeated until they become extraordinary. I write in my notebook, luxury dulls memory, hardship preserves it. Perhaps that's why stories of peasants linger in ruins and soil. They weren't trying to be remembered, only to last. In lasting, they became unforgettable. A rooster crows louder, announcing the village awake. The rhythm resumes. Fetch water, mend tools, feed animals, share warmth. No surprises, just continuation. And I realize this might be the truest peace, not escape from labor, but harmony with it. The woman from the cottage steps outside, meets my eye, smiles faintly, and returns to her work. Her expression carries something ancient. The pride of those who know worth isn't measured by ease, but by persistence. As the wind shifts, I close my eyes and think, in every century, the same truth waits. Gratitude is not found in comfort, but in continuity. By midday, the gray sky sinks low again, pressing close to rooftops. The air carries a damp weight, thick with thawing straw and wood smoke. The villagers move through it as always, without complaint, without haste. Every motion feels practiced, as if winter has trained their bodies to conserve strength. Down by the communal yard, several women work near a wooden bench. They cut turnips and parsnips into thin strips, laying them by the fire to dry. Preservation here is not decoration, but defense. By dusk, the slices will harden, stored in cloth sacks and hung from rafters. Dried roots, later soaked in broth, could stretch a meal for days. It's simple, vital winter insurance. Nearby, an older man tends a smoke rack. Gray curls drift upward, carrying the scent of herring and oak. The fish came from coastal markets, traded for wool or labor. Most inland villagers saw them only in winter, when salt was cheap. It was the feast of necessity, food not for pleasure, but for continuity. Children run between the workers, their laughter scattered like wind. One boy swings a stick as a sword. A girl balances a bowl like a crown. Even in hunger, imagination refuses to freeze. Survival hasn't erased wonder. I join the women and ask how they pass time through long winters. One smiles, thin, quick, and answers. We talk. And they do. Not gossip, not complaint, but stories. One recalls her grandmother's wedding. Another, a neighbor's ghost, said to walk the fields. They laugh, shake their heads, and share tales so old they sound like prayer. Storytelling here is medicine. It preserves the mind the way salting preserves meat. By repeating these tales, they keep fear from spoiling hope. Each word stretched, seasoned, and saved for the next hard night. The man from the cottage arrives with a small bundle wrapped in cloth, a trade. Inside are nails and a mended handle. In return, he receives a handful of dried peas. Nothing written, nothing counted, yet everything fair. This quiet barter kept communities alive, long before coins did. Tanner the dog follows him, tail wagging, nose to the ground. He's searching for scraps or warmth, perhaps both. A small girl crouches, offering bread. He takes it gently, eyes bright with trust. For a moment, The yard softens. It's not survival anymore, it's communion. The clouds darken again, promising snow. The women gather their bundles. The men pull drying racks closer to the hearth. No one risks losing food to the weather. Everything is tied, sealed, secured. In this village, food is memory, handled, guarded, shared. I make a note. Their preservation wasn't only of food, but of feeling. They stored hope as they stored turnips, carefully, collectively, without naming it. The wind rises, rattling shutters, shaking thatch. The villagers scatter to their cottages, laughter fading into snow's rhythm. And I realize what I've seen today isn't poverty at all. It's endurance, choreographed by centuries of repetition. The snow begins before the sun thinks of setting. Fine flakes at first, drifting, then thickening, swallowing sound. Sky and earth blur into one white veil. The world shrinks to the glow of firelight. The villagers move quickly, not in panic, but precision. They've done this all their lives. Doors close, animals led into byres, tools stacked under thatch. Wooden latches drop in rhythm, the sound of safety. Tanner trots beside the man from the cottage, fur powdered white, tail flicking at each word of praise. Inside, warmth takes charge. The hearth greets them like an old friend, smoke, crackle, light. The woman shakes snow from her shawl and kneels by the fire. She checks embers, adds a log, stirs the pot that waited all day. The scent is faint but promising. Oats, roots, salt, smoke. Modest but enough. They'll sleep fed. Scholars say winter evenings in peasant homes were studies in repetition. Feeding animals, tending fire, reheating stew. Every act carried ritual weight. Faith wasn't confined to churches. It lived here between hunger and warmth. One historian wrote, "For the poor, survival itself was liturgy." Watching them, I believe it. The man hangs his cloak to dry, glances at the fogged window, and murmurs about frost. Not fearful, factual. Weather is fact, not foe. Here, acceptance isn't surrender but strategy. You can't fight winter, only learn its rhythm. The woman calls the children near. She divides stew carefully, counting portions by habit. Each bowl gets the same measure, even Tanner's. Equality isn't philosophy, it's survival. If one eats more, another goes without. Justice begins at the table. The boy thanks his mother by handing her the first spoonful, a gesture from old tales. Let the one who stirs taste first, for she warms the world. Some truths live only in action. They eat slowly. The crackle of fire and whisper of spoons fill the silence. Tanner rests his chin on the boy's knee, eyes half closed, content in the glow. Outside, the storm thickens, but inside feels whole, fragile, yet whole. When the meal ends, the woman pours a cup of ale and sets it by the fire. She doesn't drink it. It's an offering, maybe for saints, maybe unseen travelers. Records call it the cup of goodwill, a charm to keep spirits kind and hunger mild. Rituals like this stitched comfort into fear. The man murmurs, snow covers, fire uncovers, a reminder that winter yields to spring, darkness to light. I write it down. Snow covers, fire uncovers. Truth of this place. The family leans together as the storm presses harder. Wind slips through cracks, but laughter still finds its place. Tanner sighs, curling tighter before stillness returns. Hunger here has dignity. It teaches rhythm, mercy, gratitude. They don't eat to celebrate. They eat to remember that life, stripped to its simplest form, is a sacred exchange between effort and grace. Outside, night deepens. Inside, the fire rises for a few hours. Warmth wins again. The storm does not rage, it whispers. Its strength lies not in fury, but persistence. Wind slides through thatch. finds every weakness in the wood, sighs through the cottage like a ghost that knows the path by memory. The sound is constant, soft, but endless. It tests the mind more than the body. The fire is the only defiance. It flickers bravely, light painting faces in amber and shadow. The woman feeds it in slow intervals, one log at a time, rhythm steady as breath, each flame a link in survival. I stare, hypnotized by its quiet determination. The man speaks, not a story yet, but to steady the air. The snow won't last, he says. By morning, the fields will shine again. His tone is factual, but beneath it lives faith, not in weather, but in continuity. Every generation said these same words. Hope here is inherited like land. The woman smiles and begins a tale. A monk lost in a storm, wandering 3 days until he found a shepherd's fire. When he awoke, the shepherd was gone. Only a dog's footprints remained. The children listen, eyes wide. The boy whispers, like Tanner. They laugh, and Tanner's tail taps the floor in reply. This is how fear is managed, not denied, but transformed. Story becomes shelter. Scholars call tales and rituals emotional technology. By turning anxiety into narrative, people could live with uncertainty without being crushed. Simplicity hides sophistication. Outside, snow thickens. The woman wraps her shawl tighter. The man shifts closer to the fire. The children curl near Tanner, who lies half on his side, half against the girl's blanket. He anchors them to something living and warm. The sight moves me more than I expect. I've read the cold arithmetic of records, harvests, rents, deaths, how numbers erase people. But here, in this small room, I feel what they never show. Strength measured not by production, but by calm, kindness, and quiet loyalty. The boy yawns, leans on his father's arm. The woman smooths his hair and keeps talking, voice soft and rhythmic. Stories fold into one another. Wolves, saints, small myths that turn cold into comfort. The children drift to sleep, lulled by a voice that makes the night gentler. The storm loses edge as though stories tamed it. The room grows hushed, except for the fire's pop and wind's murmur. Storytelling here isn't pastime, it's survival. Words are warmth. I glance at the couple. Their faces are tired, but peaceful, lit by fire. Their peace doesn't come from victory, but acceptance. They don't expect the world to be kind, only to continue. Somehow, that's enough. I write, they turned endurance into art. The ink chills as I finish, and I smile. This sentence, simple, quiet, may outlive me, as their rhythm outlived them. The woman's voice fades. The fire hisses. Tanner's breathing becomes the room's new rhythm. And for a moment, I realize what peace sounds like. Shared breath, shared warmth, shared night. Morning returns like mercy. The first light filters through the shutters, pale and trembling, unsure if it should enter. The storm has passed, leaving a silence so pure it feels sacred. Roofs, branches, and fields wear a clean skin of snow. The world is colorless, weightless still. Inside, the air smells of smoke and sleep. The fire burns low, but not out. Tanner stirs first, stretching until his back arches like a bow. His paws mark the ash near the hearth. The woman wakes next, hair loose, face calm. She adds a stick to the coals, stirring the embers alive. The man wakes soon after. No one speaks. Mornings like this demand reverence before noise. I step outside and breathe in air so sharp it stings, the kind of cold that makes the world honest. Across the village, doors open one by one. Men and women step out, blinking at the brightness. They look up, then at each other. Not a single house has fallen. Not a single chimney lies cold. Relief spreads like a shared breath. No one celebrates, they acknowledge. Survival here isn't triumph, it's rhythm. Children break the silence first, running into snow, laughter scattering like birds. Tanner bounds after them, tail whipping through the drifts, golden fur flashing in the light. The woman leans in her doorway, watching, not proud, just content. Continuity is its own joy. Villagers start their routines. One man clears snow from the roof, another carves a path to the well. Two women lift buckets together, water splashing like music. Cooperation isn't ordered here, it's instinct. The first rule of survival: no one endures alone. Records list land and livestock, never dependence, the unseen currency that kept these people alive. One fire warmed another's bread. One dog's watch guarded 3 homes. One pot fed a street. Near the chapel, an old woman scatters crumbs for birds. Her hands shake from cold, but her face is serene. Feeding birds after storms was once called a kindness toward God's smallest. Watching her, I see it's not charity, it's solidarity. Even the smallest creature deserves a place in survival. The poorest centuries often held the richest compassion. When life strips away excess, what remains is humanity. A man calls out, cheerful, the river's still flowing. Relief ripples through the crowd. The river means water, work, motion, proof the world hasn't frozen. Where there's work, there's purpose. The woman from the cottage joins the others, ladle in hand, ready to help with the communal meal. The men nod thanks. Tanner trots beside her, pausing to shake off snow. The boy chases him, laughter bright as bells. I write in my notebook, endurance becomes faith when shared. The sun rises fully now, washing the village in pale gold. Snow glitters like scattered glass. For a moment, this world doesn't look harsh, it looks holy, and I realize they never needed to escape hardship to find peace. They built peace inside it. By midday, the village gathers near the old stone chapel, a space not just of prayer, but of proximity. The air stays cold, but softened by sunlight. Smoke drifts from chimneys, blending into the pale sky. Snow crunches beneath boots, dozens of feet, moving in uneven rhythm, bound by the same quiet purpose. A long table, patched with cartwood, stands outside. Around it, the villagers place clay bowls, ladles, and linen-wrapped bundles. Each family brings what they can: bread, barley, dried meat, a turnip. No one apologizes or boasts. Worth is measured in giving, not in amount. The woman from the cottage arrives with her pot, the one that simmered through the storm. She pours it into the communal cauldron. Steam rises, fragrant with herbs and grain. Tanner follows her, tail wagging, nose high to the scent. The children laugh as he circles the pot, silent guardian of the meal. The man adds a bucket of snow to melt. Another villager sprinkles salt, rare and precious, while a third stirs with a blackened wooden spoon. The sound of stirring fills the air like a heartbeat. Their hands, rough and steady, move in harmony. It's not feasting, it's fellowship. Here, food is devotion, the daily ritual of endurance. Historian Christopher Dyer called such meals acts of communal endurance, proof that fragile lives were meant to persist together. Watching now, I understand why these gatherings mattered more than sermons. The pot thickens, the smell deepens, villagers form a circle. The elder woman who fed the birds earlier raises her hands, offering grace. What the land gives, we share. What we share returns. No amen, just ladles scraping clay. Each eats slowly, passing bowls to those with less. Tanner gets his portion last, a scoop by the bench. He eats quietly, as if he knows the moment's weight. The children giggle, their laughter warms the air more than fire could. I taste the meal: oats, carrots, a trace of smoke. Nothing rich, yet deeply satisfying. Even the faint bitterness feels earned, a flavor of fields and faithful hands. Around me, talk stirs. One man jokes his cow gave no milk. Another says at least his roof held. Laughter follows, gentle but real. Humor stretches hunger, softens fatigue. Generosity here isn't sentiment, it's structure. I write, here, generosity is currency, laughter is interest. The ink bleeds slightly, but I leave it, an honest flaw. When the bowl's empty, snow rinses them clean. Scraps are saved for later. The fire fades. People drift home. The elder woman pats Tanner's head, whispering something only he understands. He wags once, a silent vow. The man lifts the cauldron. The woman hums a tune, soft, circular, older than memory. It threads through smoke and snow, a lullaby for survival. I close my notebook. They did not endure winter alone. They dined on faith together. By late afternoon, the light thins again. Chimney shadows stretch across the white fields like tired fingers. The village quiets, as if everyone knows the day is closing. There are no clocks here, no ticking hands, no minutes to chase. Only the slow dialogue between light and dark. The peasants measure time through work and warmth. When the stew thickens, it's midday. When the fire softens, it's night. When the rooster stirs, it's tomorrow. And somehow, that feels right. As I walk toward the cottage, snow crunches beneath my boots like fragile glass. Smoke rises from each home, curling upward in soft spirals. The world is small but sufficient. Here, time isn't spent or saved, it's simply witnessed. Inside, the woman tidies the rushes, arranges tools, checks the pot. The man sits near the fire, carving a spoon. His movements are slow, patient, almost meditative. The children sort through pebbles, pretending they're coins or gems. Tanner sleeps near the door, one paw twitching as if chasing a dream. I sit by the window, watching the light fade to blue-gray. You don't tire of the same work. I ask quietly, though they can't hear me. The question is for my own restless century, but I already know the answer. They don't seek variety, they seek rhythm. Modern life worships novelty, constant motion, endless change. These people mastered repetition. Their peace came not from newness, but from sustaining what is. Dorothy Hartley once wrote, "Repetition is the backbone of the peasant's peace." I once thought it dull. Now it feels divine. The man finishes the spoon and gives it to his son. The boy inspects it proudly, as though handed a relic. The woman smiles, places it by the pot, says something that draws soft laughter. Their joy hums quietly, steady as the fire. As the stew simmers, the scent of oats and leeks fills the room. The woman adds a single slice of dried turnip saved from the communal pot, a small gesture that transforms the meal. Here, nothing is ordinary. Every spoonful carries memory. Tanner shifts, sighing beside the fire. The man scratches behind his ear, the dog's eyes close in trust. Medieval manuscripts often mention the good hound by the hearth. More than companionship, it meant protection of home and soul alike. The woman hums again, that same tune, soft and timeless. The children join in, and the room becomes a heartbeat. No instruments, no performance, just presence, a piece modern life can't package or plan. I open my notebook and write. They did not live by time, they lived by light. The ink bleeds slightly, but the line feels true. Outside, dusk deepens to violet. The snow reflects the faint firelight through the window, and for a moment, I can't tell if the light is leaving or returning, and I understand something quietly profound. Perhaps life was never meant to be measured, only noticed. Night folds gently over the village. The air outside is utterly still, no wind, no movement, just the quiet breath of a sleeping world. The snow glows under the moon, each flake reflecting like 1,000 tiny candles scattered across the fields. Inside the cottage, everything feels slower, heavier. The day's small triumphs, fire, food, laughter, fade into quiet. The woman hums her last line of song, barely above a whisper, then lets silence take over. The man stacks his tools by the wall and sits a moment, staring into the fire, as if in conversation. The children are half asleep, curled beneath wool blankets that smell of smoke and hay. Tanner lies beside them, head near the boy's hand, paw twitching as if chasing dream rabbits. The only sound is the fire's soft crackle, small, deliberate pops that mark time without measuring it. Even stillness, I realize, has rhythm. I wonder what they dream of. The man, perhaps, sees fields reborn, soil thawed and green. The woman might dream of full larders, of spring rain. The children dream without reason, only warmth, light, Tanner's tail brushing the floor. Historians rarely speak of dreams, though a few records survive. One Oxford scholar wrote that medieval peasants saw dreams as the soul's touch of the divine while the body rests. Maybe peace is that, the body still, the spirit wandering home. The woman stirs, reaching toward the child beside her, confirming, even in sleep, that life continues. That single motion, half conscious, half love, says more than any chronicle of kings. I write in my notebook, history isn't written in wars, it's whispered in gestures. The fire drops lower, its glow soft red. Smoke drifts upward like memory itself. I think of all who have fallen asleep to this same song of crackle and breath in cottages not so different from this one. Historian Judith Bennett once said, "Sleep was a social act." It sounds strange, but here it fits. Rest wasn't solitude, it was shared. The family, the dog, the fire, all breathing together, hearts aligned in the same slow rhythm. Peace isn't silence, it's company. Outside, the snow has settled. The moonlight catches the frost on the thatch, turning the roof silver, fragile, yet holding. It always holds. I close my notebook. My breath fogs as I lie on the straw beside them. The ground is hard, the blanket rough, but warmth gathers from all sides, the fire, the bodies, Tanner's fur against my sleeve. The woman exhales softly. The man murmurs in sleep. The dog sighs. Then silence again. Beyond the snow, an owl calls, low, eternal. I listen until its voice fades, and I realize, across all centuries, the sound of peace is the same. A quiet room, a steady fire, and the shared promise that morning will come again. Somewhere between night and morning, the world holds its breath. That fragile hour when even the fire has stopped crackling, when the air stands still, not yet waking, not still asleep. In this silence, history feels close, as if the past leans forward to listen. The snow outside glows faint blue. My breath rises and fades like theirs. Tanner's ear twitches once, sensing the coming shift. He lifts his head, blinks, then sighs before settling again. Even he knows the hardest part of winter isn't the cold, but the waiting. The man stirs first. He sits up slowly, rubs his hands, and feeds the fire. The woman moves soon after, adding a few drops of water to the pot, the same one that's outlasted storms and seasons. The act is quiet, almost sacred. Watching her, I realize every gesture here is faith disguised as habit. Historians define medieval faith through churches and relics. But this is another kind. Faith that morning will come, that fire will relight, that hunger will fade for one more day. They didn't pray for miracles, they practiced them. The light outside strengthens, slipping into the cracks like liquid gold. Frost melts, droplets tracing the wood. The boy wakes and smiles when he sees the fire still alive. It lived, he whispers. The woman nods. It always does. I've read of famine years, plague years, endless winters, yet between those grim lines lie small miracles. A loaf shared, a stranger welcomed, a loyal dog fed despite hunger. Survival here isn't luck, it's ethics. Dorothy Hartley wrote, "The peasant's courage was not in battle, but in beginning again." That line returns as the man dresses, same tunic, same boots, same cold. His courage is invisible but complete. The woman ladles thin stew into bowls. The children eat quietly, smiling as Tanner noses toward his share. The air warms with faint light. It isn't joy exactly, it's steadiness, and maybe steadiness is the truest joy of all. I write in my notebook, they didn't wait for better days, they built them from repetition. The words feel ancient, theirs, not mine. I wonder what they'd think of our world, full of clocks, noise, and plenty. Would they envy us or pity us? Because peace here doesn't come from abundance. It comes from belonging to a rhythm, a family, a fire that never quite dies. Even sleep is faith, lying down in darkness, believing you'll rise again. The woman opens the door. Morning greets her with a rush of cold air. She squints against the brightness. Snow glitters like powdered glass beneath the first sun. She smiles, breath steaming. The man joins her. Another day, he says. 2 words carrying the full weight of survival. Behind them, Tanner barks once. The children laugh. Life begins again, quietly, endlessly. I close my notebook, tuck it inside my coat, and whisper, this is what history truly is, not kings or wars, but the mornings that followed. The sun rises higher, the fire breathes again, and so does the world. By mid-morning, the village is alive again. The air rings with motion, shovels scraping, buckets clanking, voices calling across frosted lanes. Smoke curls from chimneys, weaving ribbons through pale sky. Snow crunches beneath the rhythm of labor. Men gather near the barn, clearing paths and mending what the storm weakened. Women kneel by the wells, breaking ice to draw water. Their movements are steady, synchronized, a choreography refined by need. Every gesture carries purpose. Every sound, from axe to hum, connects. It's the singing that surprises me most. Soft, steady, carried by cold air, voices layered like woven cloth. The melody is simple, but it binds the work together. One voice begins, another joins, and soon the rhythm of labor moves to the song. I've read of this work songs, they called them, not sung for joy, but for synchronization. Without clocks, song measured time. It lifted fatigue and made effort human again. A historian once wrote, medieval labor was more prayer than production. Listening now, I believe him. The sound carries exhaustion and devotion, necessity turned to meaning. Tanner circles the workers, tail wagging, barking softly in tune. The children follow, stamping patterns in snow. Their laughter cuts through the cold like flutes in a low symphony. The woman from the cottage hums as she passes, basket on her hip. She glances my way and smiles, peace born from repetition. The man lifts a bundle of wood onto his shoulder, breath clouding the air. He hums without thinking. These songs aren't taught, they're inherited. I can't make out the words, but one phrase repeats, through work the world turns. Simple, but truer than scripture. I jot it down in my notebook. The ink freezes briefly, then flows, like life here, stalled but continuing. As the day moves, the tempo shifts. Songs slow, labor softens. A group of women heat water in a kettle, laughing as steam rises. One jokes her husband, snores louder than thunder. Another swears Tanner could outwork the men with boots. Laughter breaks fatigue like sunlight through fog. This sound, shared joy, is the true fortress against despair. Not walls, not wealth, but humor exchanged at the edge of exhaustion. Historians call it emotional endurance, the idea that laughter and ritual preserved communities better than law. Watching them, it feels less theory than truth. They don't resist hardship, they outlast it together. When the song fades, the workers stand breathing hard, faces flushed, hands raw. Yet there's peace in their stillness, the kind born not of comfort, but completion. The woman wipes her brow. Enough for today, she says. The man nods. No pride, no complaint, only rhythm acknowledging rest. I write one last line. Where modern life chases speed, they found rhythm. Where we seek escape, they made meaning in motion. The wind carries the last hum across the hills, and I understand this was never just survival. It was symphony. The afternoon settles softly over the village, warm light diffused through clouds. The storm's violence feels distant now, replaced by calm, that rare hour between labor and dusk when the world rests but doesn't stop. Snow glows gold, smoke curls lazily from chimneys, as if the village itself exhales in rhythm. I walk down the narrow lane, my boots muffled by snow. Every doorway reveals life. A woman sits outside, mending a cloak, her fingers red yet precise. Each stitch feels deliberate, not just repair, but devotion. She hums the same melody I heard in the morning, slower now, more intimate. Inside another home, a man polishes a tool handle while a boy sorts nails by size, his hands serious with purpose. Their talk drifts through the window about the cow's milk, the roof's strength, the way Tanner barked at a crow like it was a thief. There's laughter, soft but rich, contentment whispering between them. Tanner trots between houses, a messenger of comfort. He checks doorways like a loyal inspector, earning scraps and scratches. Every household claims him, yet none own him. In records, such dogs were called village keepers, shared guardians whose loyalty belonged to everyone. Watching him, I see how true that was. A young girl kneels near a trough, refilling it with snow for animals. She hums a lullaby for the hens clustered near her. Even here, in a world ruled by survival, gentleness found room to breathe. I write, kindness was their currency, traded daily and never depleted. Archaeological finds show tools and bowls, mended again and again. Every fix told a story of care. When you have little, you treat everything as sacred. A historian wrote, the peasants' wealth was preservation. I see now, they preserved not only objects, but one another. Farther down the lane, two old men share a bench near the chapel wall. One sharpens a blade, the other drinks from a wooden cup. They speak slowly, words spaced by silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because there's no need to rush. When life is counted in days survived, patience becomes philosophy. The sun dips lower, turning the snow amber and pink. From one cottage, faint flute music drifts, untrained but sincere. Someone plays not for audience, but because sound itself warms the cold. A few children gather to listen, faces lifted, eyes soft with wonder. It's the kind of moment history never records, yet it sustains the world. I glance toward the cottage I've called my anchor. The woman hangs cloths to dry. The man checks the thatch before night. The children chase Tanner through snow. Every motion is small, yet together they build the invisible structure of life. Care, cooperation, continuity. I write one last note. Civilization isn't forged by conquest. It's mended daily by hands that refuse to stop caring. The light fades. The villagers return indoors. The sky deepens to indigo, folding the day into memory. Another entry in the long, silent archive of tenderness. The light fades again, not abruptly, but like a candle sinking into its own wax. The sky deepens to violet and smoke, and the first stars blink over the snow-laden roofs. Dusk here isn't a moment. It's a slow conversation between day and dark. The villagers move with calm precision. Fires are rekindled, tools stored, animals fed. Every action carries closure. The storm's memory lingers, but no one speaks of it. Survival is its own acknowledgement. From cottage doors come familiar sounds, creaking wood, murmured voices, the whistle of steam from cooking pots. Smoke rises thicker now, as if the village exhales relief. The scent of oak and peat blends with the faint sweetness of oats and ale. Inside the cottage, the woman moves between light and shadow. She checks the stew, adds herbs, stirs slowly. Firelight wraps her in gold and red. The man returns, boots wet from snow, cloak dripping. He hangs it by the hearth and warms his hands. Their eyes meet, no words, just understanding. The day has been survived. The children sit near the fire, arranging stones in careful lines. Tanner lies close, chin on his paws, tail twitching. The woman hums softly, the same tune as morning, slower now, binding them together. I write by firelight. The ink thickens in the chill, but I continue. This pause between work and rest, this is where history truly lives, not in wars or decrees, but in small acts of gratitude repeated each night. The man eats near the window slit, where moonlight spills faintly through. Every spoonful is ritual, a memory of effort, a promise of endurance. The woman eats next, breaking bread and giving a piece to Tanner. He takes it gently, tail thumping once in quiet thanks. When they finish, she pours a small cup of broth and sets it by the window. For travelers, she says softly, whether meant for wanderers or spirits, I don't ask. The act itself is faith, giving from little, expecting nothing. The fire crackles, warmth sinking deep into the walls. The man stretches. The children lean into their mother. Tanner shifts closer, sighing. The house becomes a cocoon of sound and light, every heartbeat part of one rhythm. Outside, snow begins again, soft and silent, blanketing rooftops and fences as if the world itself is tucking them in. I write my final note. Their peace wasn't the absence of struggle. It was ending each day with gratitude. The woman lowers the fire's flame until it glows amber, then red. The room softens. She whispers something, maybe a prayer, and the family bows their heads before lying down. No ceremony, only trust that morning will return. As the last spark fades into darkness, I understand. Civilization was never about conquest or progress. It was this, the quiet persistence to keep the light alive. The snow thickens after midnight, falling with calm. Each flake seems suspended between descent and stillness. Outside, the world dissolves into white. No path, no horizon, no sound, except the faint hiss of snow meeting thatch. It's the kind of silence that makes you aware of your heartbeat. Inside the cottage, the fire has dimmed to a soft ember pulsing in the dark. The family sleeps in a tangle of warmth. The man's arm rests protectively over the children. The woman's hand still curved around the ladle she forgot. Tanner lies by the door, ears flicking, even in sleep. The sentinel. The air carries the scent of smoke and life, wood, wool, earth, breath. I sit awake, listening to the storm outside and the symphony of rest within. There's something holy about it, the contrast between the cold that kills and the warmth that defies it. Historians call medieval winters merciless, famine, disease, isolation, the trinity of fear. But they forget the counterweight, faith. Not cathedral faith, but hearth faith, the kind that burns beside hunger and asks asks for enough. Barbara Hannawalt wrote, "Faith was the daily transaction between the body and hope. Here, that truth lives, every act, feeding the fire, dividing the stew, leaving a cup by the window, is a negotiation between despair and devotion. The wind rattles the shutters. Snow seeps through a crack, landing beside Tanner. He lifts his head, licks the flakes once, and rests again. The gesture is instinctive, acceptance, without alarm. Even he knows this is life here, endurance, not avoidance. The children's cheeks are flushed, their breath steady. They know nothing of famine or tax ledgers. Their world begins and ends in this circle of light. Maybe that's mercy, ignorance as protection. The woman murmurs a blessing. The fire answers with a pop. I write, in the balance between death and dawn, they built meaning. The ink spreads, smudged by the cold fitting, since history itself is smudged. The night deepens. Outside, snow keeps falling. The storm isn't cruel. It's indifferent. Nature is neither friend nor foe. The peasants never hated it. They feared it, respected it, lived within its rhythm. Survival wasn't rebellion, it was partnership. A distant sound, wind through trees, or a wolf's call. Tanner's ears twitch, then settle. I note fear never vanished. It learned its place beside faith. The fire flickers low. Shadows lengthen, swallowing corners of the room. The woman's face glows, lined, peaceful, shaped by labor and love. The kind of beauty that can't be painted, only remembered. And I realize the secret of their survival. They didn't conquer the night. They befriended it. The darkness is no enemy but a teacher, reminding us that even the smallest ember can outshine eternity for a moment. I close my notebook. The storm breathes. The world waits. Between cold and faith, humanity endures again. By the time the storm quiets, the sky has turned from black to gray. That in-between light, where you can't yet see the sun but can feel its promise. The snow has stopped, leaving a hush that feels earned. Every branch, roof, and path is blanketed in silence. The world looks new, though it isn't. Inside the cottage, warmth lingers like memory. The fire burns to a deep orange core. Tanner stretches beside it, paws pressing the stones as if pushing the night away. His breath fogs faintly in the cold. The family sleeps still, bodies folded like pages in a book written by survival. I rise quietly and step outside. The cold greets me sharp, clean. The snow crunches beneath my boots like glass. The air carries no scent, only purity. The horizon glows pale blue, light gathering beyond the hills. The storm is over. More importantly, they endured it. Smoke rises from other cottages, thin, graceful lines. Each plume tells the same story. We made it through. It's easy to romanticize this, but I don't. I know the cost: hunger, cold, repetition. Yet I understand what modern life lost: the discipline of hope. For the peasant, hope wasn't emotion, it was labor. It had to be maintained, stoked, guarded like a fire that could die if neglected. Wolger once wrote, survival was less a matter of fortune than of routine. They knew that. Hope wasn't granted, it was practiced, like mending, like waking to the same gray dawn and beginning again. The woman steps out behind me, shawl wrapped tight. Her breath curls like incense. She squints at the horizon, where the first gold breaks through. It's clear, she whispers, not wonder, but gratitude. Quiet, lived-in gratitude. The man follows, axe in hand. He taps the handle once, then looks to her. She nods. The day begins, not with excitement, but rhythm. Work is waiting. Tanner bounds into the snow, barking once, before racing in circles. The children stumble out laughing, still half asleep. Their sound cuts the stillness like music. The woman laughs too, her smile brief but bright, the real sunrise. I jot in my book, hope is not fragile here, it's manual. They don't wait for good days, they build them out of ash, leftovers, and repetition. Hope is the muscle memory of faith. The village stirs. A call for water, the thud of an axe, metal on wood. No declarations, just continuation. The woman kneels by the doorway, brushing snow aside. Beneath it, yesterday's tracks appear. She traces one with her finger and smiles. It's all still here, she murmurs. That feels like the point of history. We chase progress, but they knew permanence, not in monuments, but in mornings. As the sun breaks over the horizon, light spills across the snow, turning the world to gold. Firelight joins it, and for a moment, the village glows. It's not grandeur or victory, it's life, quietly continuing. I close my notebook and write, history's greatest miracle was never invention, it was endurance. The sun climbs higher, turning the frozen village into a mirror of light. Every flake flashes like glass before fading back into snow. Roofs glisten, trees shimmer, even the smallest branch looks sacred. Morning has returned, not as an event, but a renewal. The villagers move with quiet assurance. A man splits wood behind his cottage, the steady echo of his axe sinking with another nearby. Women carry buckets to the well, voices rising and falling like verse. Smoke curls from chimneys, gray ribbons in the sky. It feels orchestrated, as if the village shares one heartbeat. Watching them, I realize what no archive captures. Faith here wasn't about miracles. It was about order, the humble order that keeps hunger away. Roofs standing, minds steady. Judith Bennett once wrote, faith filled the gaps where control ended. These people controlled little, not weather, harvest, or disease, but they controlled rhythm. They found holiness in repetition. The man wipes his brow, looking up, almost a prayer, though he never folds his hands. The woman returns with water, arms trembling. Their eyes meet, not romantic, not tender, just human. Mutual acknowledgement that life, again, continues. The children run past, Tanner chasing in circles, snow spraying behind him. Their laughter ripples through the air, echoing against barns. Neighbors pause to smile, fatigue softening for a moment. Laughter is rare here, but when it comes, it changes everything. Even in hardship, joy finds its way quiet, stubborn. I write, repetition was not monotony, it was grace disguised as labor. Modern eyes might call this life bleak, harsh weather, little food, endless toil. Yet standing here, I feel a peace our era's abundance cannot match. Their rhythm forms a harmony we've forgotten. They live in the present because the present is all they can afford. And it's enough. A bell rings from the chapel, one slow tone across the frost. The villagers pause, not in worship but in sync. The sound reminds them another day has been granted. Wolger wrote, the peasants' devotion was measured not by creed, but by constancy. I see that constancy in their hands, steps, breath in the cold. They live without spectacle, without complaint. That feels closer to truth than anything we've built since. The woman kneels at the hearth, lighting a small flame. She hums a tune, part lullaby, part prayer. The children join softly. Even Tanner listens, ears twitching. It's the same song that greets dawn and closes night. I write one final line beneath the morning sun. They prayed not with words, but with rhythm. Because here, every act, stirring a pot, swinging an axe, sharing laughter over stew, is worship. Their God is endurance. Their scripture, survival. Their paradise, peace in motion. As the light spreads across the snow, I finally understand what history never says. The medieval world wasn't merely endured. It was lived fully and faithfully, one humble repetition at a time. As the sun lifts higher, the village hums with motion. It isn't noise, not the chaos of cities or the chatter of modern life, but harmony itself. Wheels creak, children laugh, dogs bark, metal strikes wood. Every tone feels placed, shared. Watching it, I see how little space, individuality, held here. A man's worth wasn't ambition, but reliability. A woman's pride came from care, not ownership. To belong was success. I once thought that was limitation. Now I see liberation. When life depends on shared endurance, ego loses meaning. There's no vanity when every loaf, spark, and breath comes from cooperation. The self dissolves, replaced by something steadier, belonging. Records from Waram, Percy note. Each household worked in accordance with the next. They didn't survive beside each other. They survived through each other. The world beyond could fall, but if one hearth stayed lit, the others endured. Two men repair a fence, hands moving in unison. A woman kneads dough, humming softly. Another brings salt, a gesture so small it could be missed. Yet this is where civilization breathes. Tanner trots between them, fur glinting in light. He belongs to all, a symbol of shared trust. When he sits by a doorway, the house feels safer. When he runs through the field, the day feels lighter. Even animals follow the same law, together or not at all. Colin Platt wrote, "The peasant village was not merely a unit of economy, but of spirit." Standing here, that feels true. You hear that spirit in shovels striking earth, in laughter through frost, in the breath of life itself. I write, they didn't fear loneliness. They never met it. Here, solitude is unnatural. Every space, the field, the cottage, the path, is shared. Even grief is collective. When a child is lost, all mourn. When a harvest fails, all adjust. The line between mine and ours is soft, like snow melting into snow. And I can't help but compare it to us, the screens, the distance, the quiet despair of plenty. We live surrounded by abundance, yet starved of connection. They had little, yet were full. It's a trade we made, without seeing the cost. The man from the cottage joins those at the fence. He nods, lifts his axe, and the rhythm resumes. A child passes with a loaf wrapped in cloth, offers it silently, then runs back laughing. The man tears a piece, pockets it, keeps working. Here, gratitude is shown through return, not words. I write again. Their individuality was in their giving, not owning. The sky brightens. Tanner barks once, and somewhere a bell answers, two sounds blending, neither dominant. And I realize peace isn't built on isolation or freedom, but interdependence. These people, with all their hardship, held something our wealth can't buy, the comfort of never being alone. I close my notebook, breathe the scent of wood smoke and bread. Laughter rises again, carried by wind. They didn't chase meaning, I think. They made it together, one shared day at a time. By late afternoon, the air cools again. The sun lowers behind the bare trees, its light brushing the snow like a tired painter. Shadows lengthen, calm, expectant. The day's work is ending, and the village softens into stillness. The men return first, boots caked with ice, shoulders dusted with frost. Each carries something small, wood, a broken tool, a bundle of straw. They walk slowly, their pace set by fatigue. Tanner trots beside them, tail swaying, breath fogging in the cold. He pauses at every gate, as if checking that everyone's home. Smoke thickens from the cottages, curling upward in slow lines. The scent of cooking fills the air, barley, leeks, herbs, and salt pork. It's the same every evening, yet hunger makes it holy. Inside, the woman stirs the stew with patient rhythm. The man mends a strap near the fire. The children feed Tanner bread crusts, giggling when he licks their hands. Ordinary moments, yet they feel sacred, rituals repeated through centuries. A scholar once wrote, "The medieval home was not a place of luxury, but of peace, earned daily." I see that truth in how she wipes the bowl before serving, how he helps the children closer to the fire, in Tanner's patient eyes, waiting for his share. When the food is ready, they eat in silence, not from formality, but reverence. The warmth of the stew meets the chill in their bones, and for a time, the world is reduced to firelight, breath, and sustenance. The woman sets aside a small portion by the door. She does this every evening, her private scripture, whether for a traveler or the unseen, it's faith expressed in food. To give while having little, that's true abundance. The man breaks the quiet. "Tomorrow, the thaw might start," he says. The woman smiles faintly. "Or another storm." He chuckles softly. "Then we'll endure that one too." It isn't optimism, but understanding. Winter will test them again. Hunger and cold always return. Yet they don't despair. They prepare, eat, and rest. That's their faith. The children whisper stories. Tanner thumps his tail at his name. The woman laughs softly, leaning back, eyes half closed. I write in my notebook. They do not chase peace. They practice it. Outside, the last light fades. The snow glows under the moon. Inside, the fire deepens steady, intimate. The family draws closer, not just from cold, but because that's what humans do when the world grows uncertain. Historian Barbara Hannay-Walt called these nightly meals emotional harvests, moments where families gathered what little warmth the day had given. The food feeds their bodies, the ritual their souls. The man pets Tanner. "Good boy, keep watch." The dog sighs and settles by the door. The woman hums her slow tune, a rhythm of heartbeats and seasons. I close my notebook. The fire crackles, the stew cools, the snow falls beyond the walls. And I think, not for the first time, the real luxury of the medieval world was not comfort, it was belonging. Night falls again, quiet as breath. The snow outside has hardened to a faint crust that glimmers beneath moonlight. Every sound in the village is muted, hammering, chatter, even dogs. The world is wrapped once more in its winter blanket, and with it comes sacred stillness. Inside the cottage, the family moves through their final motions of the day, not rushed, but inevitable, like the closing of a chapter. The woman scrapes the last stew from the pot, sets it aside, and wipes her hands on her apron. The man folds his cloak, checking seams, preparing both garment and spirit for another day. The children whisper stories too soft to follow, but sweet enough to fill the air. Tanner curls near the door, nose beneath tail, a small circle of warmth. He stirs only when the woman passes, brushing her fingers over his back. A wordless thank you to a creature who guards without asking. The fire burns low, a red heart pulsing within ash. Its glow dances across the walls, painting everything in amber and shadow. I sit quietly, notebook open, but the words come slower now, not because there's nothing to say, but because all that needs saying already lives in silence. Outside, the moon rises higher, pure and distant. Its light slips through shutters, spilling across the floor in silver ribbons. For a moment, the room feels like a living painting, warmth and frost, faith and fatigue held in balance. Here, I understand why repetition mattered. Modern life fears monotony, but the medieval soul found peace in it. Each act, stirring the same pot, patching the same cloak, waking to the same dawn, was persistence made sacred. Doing the same again wasn't failure, it was proof life continued. Historian Eileen Power wrote, "The peasant's calendar was not linear but circular, a wheel that turned endlessly, carrying both suffering and grace. Their lives weren't about progress, but preservation, not pursuit of more, but protection of enough. The man checks the latch, closing it with care of a prayer. The woman whispers something soft. I can't make out the words, but the rhythm is familiar. Her song, her heartbeat, her endurance. I write slowly. Peace here is not the absence of hardship. It is the presence of ritual. The children sleep, their breaths sinking with the crackle of fire. The man lies beside them, one arm across the youngest. The woman rests near Tanner, her hand close to the embers, unwilling to release warmth completely. The wind sighs against the window, not fierce, just a reminder of the world beyond. Still, within these walls, there is peace, earned peace, the kind no crown commands, no army defends, no sermon promises. I close my notebook and watch the last flicker of flame. History remembers rulers and wars, not nights like this. Yet these moments sustained humanity, quiet victories no chronicler wrote down. As the final ember fades, I realize civilization wasn't built by kings. It was kept alive by those who refused to let the fire die. When the first light returns, it's almost invisible, a faint silver wash across the snow, a thin promise on the horizon. The cold has not eased, but it has softened. The storm, the dark, the long night, all of it has folded quietly into yesterday. The cycle begins again. I open my eyes to movement, the shuffle of boots, the cough of the man as he rises, the crack of frozen wood feeding the fire. The woman stirs next, coaxing life back into warmth. The children stretch, their faces marked by sleep. Tanner lifts his head and yawns. The day has arrived. The air smells of ash and snow. Steam curls from the pot as the woman pours the last of the broth, mixing it with oats. The sound of the spoon rings faintly, simple but profound, like a bell signaling rebirth. The man looks out through the narrow window slit. The light outlines every crease on his face. It's clear, he says. The woman nods. Neither smile, but both exhale, a silent victory that marks another day. Outside, the village awakens. Doors creak, voices murmur, dogs bark. The smell of burning wood and damp fills the air. It's repetition, yes, but also renewal. Every dawn honors the covenant between life and endurance. As I step outside, the cold bites sharp and clean. Footprints from the previous day are gone, erased by the night's snow. The world insists on starting fresh, even after centuries of the same struggle. I think of all the hands that have done this before, rising to light fires, feed families, tend animals. Millions of nameless souls whose endurance built the world we live in now. A scholar once said, history is not the story of those who conquered, but of those who continued. And here, in this frozen morning, I understand. Civilization doesn't advance through glory, it survives through repetition. The woman steps outside, shawl tight, breath clouding before her. It'll be another long day, she says, not to me, but to the morning itself, acknowledging the cycle as both burden and blessing. The children emerge, chasing each other through the snow, laughter echoing like spring in winter. The man chuckles softly. For a moment, all hardship dissolves, the light on their faces, the warmth of laughter, making even the cold seem kind. I take out my notebook and write, they didn't live for comfort, they lived for continuation. In our world obsessed with progress, we've mistaken motion for meaning. The peasants knew better. Peace isn't found in change, but in acceptance, the quiet mastery of repeating what must be done with dignity and care. The woman calls to her children. The man lifts his tools. Tanner runs ahead, paws breaking the perfect snow. The sun climbs higher, filling every shadow. The village comes alive once more. We endure not because we are powerful, but because we are faithful. Faithful to the fire, faithful to the dawn, faithful to each other. That is the legacy of the medieval winter, and the only kind of peace that truly lasts. The day stretches onward, slow and certain, until its rhythm folds once more into evening. The light softens, the air cools. The same song that opened the morning now closes the day, steady, circular, eternal. I sit outside the cottage, notebook on my knee, as smoke rises toward the darkening sky. The scent of peat and bread drifts across the snow, warm and familiar. In the distance, laughter, a barking dog, a bucket lowering into a well. Ordinary sounds, yet somehow, in this light, they feel sacred. The medieval world was never easy. It was fragile, narrow, unpredictable. Yet within that fragility, they found a grace modern comfort cannot reproduce. Their peace didn't come from having enough. It came from being enough. They lived by the steady pulse of survival, the repetition of life itself. As I look around, I realize their story isn't just history, it's inheritance. Every one of us carries echoes of them. The way we gather around a meal, wait for dawn, or find comfort in small routines. It all began in places like this, in villages where snow sealed the world shut and faith kept it breathing. Tanner trots past, pausing to nudge my knee before heading to the fields. Moonlight catches his fur, turning him silver for an instant, a creature of habit and joy, a reminder that survival is sweeter when shared. Inside, the family prepares for night. The children settle near the fire. The woman hums. The man checks the door. The flames dim. Shadows lengthen. And once again, peace returns. I close my notebook and breathe in the stillness. The world beyond may have changed, kingdoms risen and fallen, but the essence of life remains. Warmth, food, safety, love. The quiet things that sustained them still sustain us. Maybe that's why we revisit these stories, not to escape the present, but to remember how to live within it, to slow down, to listen, to rediscover that serenity isn't chased, it's preserved. I whisper softly, the past never really ends. It just sleeps, waiting for us to remember. The wind moves gently through the trees, carrying that whisper away. The snow glows under the moon. Tanner curls near the door, the fire hums, and time itself feels drowsy, as if the world exhales at once. As you drift into that quiet, imagine this peace, breath matching firelight, cold air softened by warmth, endurance turned to grace. Because these stories aren't just knowledge, they're calm, not just memory but rest. So tonight, as sleep gathers, remember, you are part of an unbroken chain of dreamers and survivors, from peasant hands to your own. May their peace be yours. May their endurance be your rest. And when you wake, carry a piece of their quiet strength into your day. This is the end of our story, but not the end of history. You've been listening to Restful History Hub, where the past whispers you to sleep. Until next time, stay warm, stay curious, and sleep deeply. The fire has faded to a single glow, a quiet ember pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the ash. The village sleeps. The air outside is still, heavy with frost, but the world feels safe. Even the stars seem hushed, watching over the people below. I remain by the window, watching that faint pulse of light. It flickers, wanes, steadies, and I realize it mirrors us all. The same flame that warmed the peasants burns within every generation after. The tools change, torches to candles, hearths to lamps, lamps to screens, but the longing stays the same, to find warmth in the cold, meaning in the dark, and comfort in time's passing. That is the quiet inheritance of history, not its wars or crowns, but its rhythm. I step outside one last time. The snow crunches beneath my boots, the air clean and sharp. The moon sits low, silvering roofs and frozen wells. The silence feels eternal. Somewhere, an owl calls, a soft note that fades into the vastness. In moments like this, you can almost hear the centuries breathing, the slow exhale of lives lived, fires tended, prayers whispered into winter. You can feel the continuity of it all. The peasants never knew their stories would reach us. They never imagined narrators. Yet here we are, remembering them, drawing peace from their endurance. That perhaps is what the night teaches best. Time does not erase, it transforms. The same snow that buried their footprints now falls on ours. The same hunger that drove them to share bread still drives us to share stories. The same quiet hope that carried them through the dark remains in us, waiting to be felt, honored, and passed on. I take one last note. Peace survives through remembrance. The ink bleeds slightly, fading like their world into sleep. And with that, I close the book. The wind brushes past, light as a sigh. Tanner shifts in his sleep. From inside, a faint hum rises, the woman's lullaby again, softer now. Blending with the wind, it drifts into the fields, up toward the stars. A final benediction. If you're still awake, let that sound carry you. Let it guide your breathing, slow, steady, human. The same rhythm they lived by, the same one you carry now. And before you close your eyes completely, remember this. They survived every winter they faced. So will you. Brief pause, faint crackle of fire. When dawn returns, it will bring another story, another quiet journey through forgotten corners of history. Perhaps we'll walk through a monastery or sit beside a candle, hearing quills scratch parchment as the world outside freezes. But for now, rest. You've traveled far enough tonight. The snow falls, the fire sighs, the past grows still. And as you drift deeper into that calm, know this, the story will be waiting when you wake. Soft closing tone. You've been listening to Restful History Hub, where time slows, memory breathes, and the world sleeps beside its own history. Good night, and may your dreams walk gently through the past.